Hello, everybody. My name is Timothy Gager, sitting at poolside, and this is Virtual Fridays Dire Literary Series. And tonight, my guest is Sharon Greenwald. And let me tell you a little bit about Sharon, if I may, before we turn it over to her. Here we are. So this is Sharon's book. It's a memoir called 69th Street Suicide, a memoir of divorce, depression, and defining my why. And of course, it's available at fine bookstores. And Sharon lives in New York City, and I believe this is her first book. So Sharon does not have a very great presence. Usually I do a lot of research on my folks, and I even find a bio. So maybe we can talk about that at some point later. But for me, it's a great book, and I would like to turn it over to Sharon, and she's going to read a little bit from it.
Great, thank you. And I actually am living in Florida now. Yeah, I know. Okay. Hard to read, but pregnancy and punishment. I'm only 17 and I think I'm pregnant. This made my first experience with Larry seem like a day at the beach. Randy and I were introduced at a party during my junior year of high school and his first year in college. His thick lips, longish black hair, and lightly bearded chin immediately caught my eye. On weekends, when he drove up from southern New Jersey, nausea from anticipation prevented me from partaking in the family's ritual Friday night Shabbat dinner. In retrospect, the relationship was built on mutual chemistry and not much else. While getting caught up in the romance of going out with someone in college and dating in general, I overlooked glaring flaws, including Randy's lack of affection. After our breakup, I discovered that he was dating and most likely sleeping with other women at school. This added to the agonizing heartache that was about to unfold. I didn't realize that I ovulate around the 17th day of my period, not the 14th day. Regardless, it was beyond irresponsible not using protection on one of our weekends together. Panic set in when I missed my period, which normally arrived like clockwork. My heart sank when I knew that the double blue line on the pregnancy test would change my life forever. Having a baby at 17 never once occurred to me. I was too emotionally immature to consider anything other than an abortion and made the monumental decision without giving it enough thought. It's a mistake that quickly came back to bite me in the ass. Randy's reaction was both unexpected and shocking as he raged in front of our friends with a venom that terrified me. Spit came flying out of both sides of his mouth as he shrieked, "You wanted this, you got pregnant on purpose." He walked away from the situation and refused to take me for the procedure. All at once, overwhelming despair, anger, fright, and helplessness held me in its grip. The coward never looked back as he quickly grabbed his keys and left, maintaining his stride as he snatched his black leather jacket off the back of the sofa on the way out. I berated myself for not only getting into this horrific situation, but fooling myself that Randy liked me for more than just sex. After his tirade, there was nothing I wanted more than to avoid friends' questioning looks. So I watched Randy's car from the front window and bolted out of the house the second I saw the bright red taillights on his Buick turn the corner. Unbeknownst to me at the time, screwing up and disappointing myself this badly would permanently kill any chance of achieving happy Sharon. It also prohibited me from ever getting to the point where I could completely love myself. Contrary, it set the foundation for never-ending self-hatred. I now consider myself a murderer who deserved nothing but pain and punishment, but it was a subconscious guilt, and I initially couldn't understand why I felt more at peace when my life was empty and lonely. Later, I realized that the emotional pain ensured that I was paying my dues for the worst mistake I'd ever made. The day after discovering my pregnancy, I kept plans to visit my sister at college in Maryland. Sitting in a People's Express aisle seat, I pushed in my flat stomach while begging my period to erase this nightmare. If it did, I promised the universe that I'd never have unprotected sex again. Unfortunately, I was never given the chance to keep my promise. Not being close to my sister at the time, I didn't share my predicament. Instead, I suffered in silence while unsuccessfully trying to convince myself that the pregnancy test was a false positive. I now held my breath every time I used the bathroom, praying to see the tiniest hint of blood. Throughout the weekend, I alleviated stress through nervous eating and the habit of picking my finger. Here began my lifelong battle with food to subconsciously push down insufferable feelings. Upon my return home, I made an appointment at Planned Parenthood to take care of the situation ASAP. The abortion was scheduled for the Monday of President's Day weekend. Unexpectedly, my boss, Steve, from my part-time job at the deli, called that morning. "Hey, Sharon, I have something to do. Would you mind covering for me?" My mom overheard the conversation and wouldn't stop nagging. "Why can't you go? Steve needs you to cover for him. I don't understand why you can't do him this favor." Panicked and at a loss for words, the only excuse that came to mind was, "I'm taking my friend for an abortion." It was the early 1980s when fewer options for birth control meant many women relied on the pull-out method, which wasn't terribly effective. My mom initially believed my lie, but I think it's because she desperately wanted to. Her intuition had zero doubt the abortion was mine. Planned Parenthood didn't allow surgical patients to drive themselves home, so my good friend Eileen accompanied me. On the 20-minute drive over, I refused to acknowledge that I was about to abort a real baby. Since I was only 7 weeks pregnant, there were no symptoms or weight gain to remind me that a living soul was growing inside of me. Upon arrival, a woman at the front desk had me sign in before handing over forms that asked questions like, when was my last period and was I having the abortion under duress? Then it was off to the changing room to put on a blue gown opening in the back. As I waited to be called, I couldn't help but notice that all the other patients were around my age. I thought about how stupid we all were to find ourselves in this predicament. When I woke from the procedure, the tiniest bit of cramping welcomed my return back to my seemingly normal life. What I didn't know at the time was that my life would never be the same again. After getting dressed, my friend and I stopped at the diner to grab something to eat. At that time, everything I did was mechanical and matter of fact. Emotional numbing enabled me to handle the abortion as nonchalantly as if I'd gone to a dentist appointment. Much to my dismay, Randy didn't pay for the procedure or call afterward to see how I was feeling. I only allowed myself to feel relief, but I all too soon discovered that my demons had their own agenda.
Thank you, Sharon. And let's open up with some questions here. Now, what you read is very brave and very intimate and revealing. Do you ever question, or do you ever feel funny reading it out loud, like to a group of strangers?
The second I woke up from my coma, I knew that my purpose was to help other people, and I can't think about myself. I just have to think about the people who I'm helping, so I don't let myself feel awkward.
So for people that haven't researched your book or read your book, you woke up from a coma. Do you want to tell us a little bit something about that?
Yeah, I was in a bad place after I asked for the divorce, but it still freaked me out. And 10 years later, after living in hell, it was the weekend before July 4th weekend. I hadn't left my apartment all weekend. And I thought about the upcoming long weekend. And I said, I can't do this. I can't do this for one more minute. I can't spend another long weekend alone. And something snapped inside of me. And I knew that I would be able to swallow the pills that I had hoarded for years.
And what was your first thought when you came out of the coma? Like, were you angry that you were still here with us?
I don't remember when I was told what was happening, because when you come out of a coma, it's slowly, you're in and out, but I was never angry. No, it was actually looking at all my loved ones with the pain on their face. I immediately felt sad and guilty that I had done this to them.
So besides overcoming your depression at the time, did you have to do some additional work to overcome the guilt around it?
Well, I was in the medical hospital for 2 weeks. I was institutionalized for 2 weeks. And then I was in an outpatient program, 6 hours a day for 2 weeks of therapy. So I didn't focus on the guilt. I focused, once I learned that it was depression and I wasn't a loser who was meant to just suffer her whole life because of the abortion, I was ready to go. I'm very an A-type kind of personality. And once I knew that there was hope, it was like, okay, let's do it.
So was there a switch, or did you have an epiphany around that?
Yeah, it was depression that was telling me that I didn't deserve to live or be happy and I should punish myself for the rest of my life. It wasn't me telling me that. It became depression that convinced me of this.
Do you, what do you do? What are some of the tools in your toolbox to battle the depression?
You know, I haven't been depressed since the incident. I just, positivity. all of a sudden I'm a positive person. I rewired my brain and it was fairly easy for me to do. Like everyone else could be like, oh, it's raining, it's horrible. And I'll be like, oh, but the grass will be greener tomorrow with the flowers. You know, and I was never like that before. And I prepare myself for things. If I know, oh, I'm going to be alone on this day and I don't want to be, I immediately make plans to make sure that I'm not going to have a long day by myself if that's not what I want.
And how do you pitch a book that has the words divorce, depression, and suicide? I can imagine that can be a pretty tough sell.
I think honestly everyone has experienced one of those. So it kind of covers a lot of different things. It's not just about suicide. It's about my life. It's about what depression did to me, what the divorce did to me emotionally. It's covers a lot of different things.
Barbara's got a question in chat. It says, some of us, myself, meaning Barbara included, had abortions at that age in that era. Do you ever think back and wonder about the baby that wasn't born?
Mm-hmm. I feel like for some reason it would be a boy and he would be in his 40s now. And it's interesting because when I hear about the Roe versus Wade and they say that a lot of women ruin their life by having an abortion, it's very true. But on the other hand, I believe that women should be able to do with their bodies what they want. So I'm extremely confused and I'm on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, there's such a narrative about like that people that want to get abortions, that people are, you know, it's a birth control. Oh, well, I'll just have that. How do we change that narrative?
I don't know. For some women, for some reason, it doesn't affect them. I know people who've had 3 abortions and it didn't affect them. I mean, we should be teaching about birth control, but then you have the religious people who say, no, they shouldn't be using birth control. Like everything has something that shouldn't happen, so that a lot of children, you know, a lot of teenagers don't use birth control because their parents are, oh, you don't use birth control. And then they get pregnant. And then it's, well, do I have a baby when I'm 17 or do I have an abortion? And it's very conflicting.
Now, when you were in that bad place, how long did you contemplate harming yourself? Because my research said that you had a lot of self-destructive thoughts daily that you had to overcome. So how long were those daily destructive thoughts going on in your head? Well,
when I had the abortion at 17, that's when I decided one day that I was going to kill myself when my emotional pain became too bad. I just knew I was just going to do it one day. And then when my first fiance cheated on me and left me, that I went into a depression, but I didn't realize that losing 10 pounds in 3 days wasn't normal because it was normal for me. So, and then when I asked for the separation, I was terrified. I had stopped working to raise the kids. So now I'm reinventing myself at the age of 42. And I was convinced that I would die alone because I wasn't meant to be happy. So all of these things played a perfect storm, as my therapist liked to say.
This is a question from Cindy. Have readers contacted you to say that your book has helped them in some way?
More than one person has said that it really helped them, especially for people who know someone who's gone through suicide or attempted suicide. It's really helped them understand the thinking behind it, because as I always say, people who don't understand it are trying to rationalize something that's totally irrational. Like right before I took the pills, I said I was sorry to the people in heaven who I was about to meet again, but I did not for a second think my kids were going to miss me.
So what advice, say somebody's contacted you and saying, I am very depressed and I'm thinking about committing suicide. What advice do you counter with advice, or do you direct them to other services?
I would never say if I could do it, you can do it too. And I hate when people say that. I try to say things like, if you're thinking that you're worthless or that no one loves you, that's depression talking. That's not you. So look for the help that you need, whether it's a friend or it's a therapist, whoever it is, but don't just give up. First, try to help yourself. And the odds are that you'll find that people do love you and you are valuable on this earth.
Did you have a moment that you remember afterwards that you just kind of said, hey, I'm really happy?
Wow, I can't believe you're asking that. A couple of months ago, I was sitting with a friend. And it was just, you know, with friends, nothing extra special. And I looked at him and I said, I'm gonna cry. I said, I'm really happy. And for those 10 years that I suffered, I always thought about if I ever got happy again, I wouldn't take it for granted. And I thought about being in situations like that and thinking, I'm happy. And I'm happy.
Now you climbed through this darkness and came out the other side. So I'd like you to think about mental illness in our country. What do we do right and what do we do wrong?
Well, the stigma is totally wrong. People judge. Even my sister at one point, she's like, I don't understand why you don't come over for holidays. And she'll just stop being depressed. And she has a weight issue. And I looked at her and I said, why don't you stop being fat? And she got it because she has her own issues.
Now, when you talk about like, why don't you get over it? What are some of the other like people that might not know you and they might think that or think about your book? What are some of the other dumb things that people say about depression?
Well, I hate when people, oh yeah, I've been depressed too. And it's like, okay, regular depression is not like staying in your apartment for 3 weeks on end. It's different. I thought about suicide all the time. I lived in New York City at the time. I would walk in front of taxis. I didn't know if they were going to stop or not. When I was at the subway, I would think about jumping on the tracks, but I just couldn't get myself to do it. I was very unafraid of death, and I welcomed it and did everything I could to try to bring it into my life.
That's kind of interesting that you actually wondered if the taxis were going to stop in New York City. They never stop.
Mm-hmm. Well, they did for me until I got hit by one. That's another story.
Now, do you feel that all people are depressed or have
Today, I feel like we all have a reason to be depressed. It's a very negative environment. I'm an empath, and I was saying since about 2016, something is going to happen. I feel it. Something bad is going to happen. I feel it. And then COVID hit, and I was just feeling it earlier than people were experiencing it. But yeah, I don't blame people now that they're paying $80 to fill their tank. They can't afford food for their kids, or they don't have a job, or yeah, it's a terrible world right now.
Chris Joseph has a question. Chris wrote a book called Life's a Ride about overcoming pancreatic cancer, stage 4. And his question is a great question from him is, are you still unafraid of death?
Yes. I'm very spiritual, so I look forward to seeing my dead loved ones again. But I'm also, I took the pills without any issue. Death is just the last stop of living. I kind of follow the Buddhism way, which is it's another stage of living. We all have to die, and I always imagined it that my father would have his arms outstretched, come to me, and it would be a beautiful thing. And people with the near death experiences, they explain it that way. And it's more than one person that says that this is what. So I think it'll be beautiful, but it'll happen naturally for me.
But you didn't have that experience. There wasn't a tunnel or a hand, and your grandfather wasn't there, and the dog wasn't there. You just woke up, basically.
It was when I was in the coma. It was total black. No dreaming. I didn't hear anyone talking to me. Nothing. It was just nothingness.
How much time did you lose?
5 days. And then I started waking up, and that was slow. But yeah, 5 days I was out.
And you're a believer in near-death experiences, or?
Oh yes, I was actually kind of pissed that I didn't have one because I was very close to death, and I didn't see my father. I hallucinated something, but it was not a near-death experience. No.
Now, have you read other books on the subject matter? Have they been before you wrote your book or after you wrote your book? And if you did, were they memoirs or were they more clinical?
I actually read a lot of clinical as I was writing my book, as I was, doing research, and it just pissed me off. Like, a scientist is explaining depression and suicide, but how do you know? It's only someone who's been through it that could really explain it. They have their theories, but suicide a lot of times it's, a last minute decision. It's like, well, no, there are people like me who planned it for 10 years. You can't put everything in one basket. Everyone's different.
Did you read Emil Durkheim's book on suicide about the randomness of society is what causes the people to hang on to life more randomly and not specifically?
No, but it sounds good.
So the other thing that I was going to ask was that what other books and memoirs do you recommend on the subject?
It's Okay Not to Be Okay. I liked, yeah, I liked it a lot. And Matt Haig wrote a beautiful book about his journey, almost killing himself. And I mean, I read a lot of other books that I can't remember right now.
Yeah, I've actually read It's Okay to Not Be Okay, and it's a really remarkable book about how people in society and nearly everyone handles death incorrectly. But you're on the show and she's not, so we're going to continue here. The other thing I wanted to ask about it is you said it wasn't something that was a snap decision for you. How long did you think about it, or that was like in your head, like this is a possibility?
In 2006, I asked for the divorce, and then I had what I call my nervous breakdown. And then I moved into the city in 2011, and that's in 2012, I did a will because I owned a co-op. It was complicated. I had my 2 children. I was hoarding pills from my headache doctor. So I was planning it for a long time.
Now, do you miss New York City at all? Or?
No, no.
And you live now in Florida, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think city environments, places like New York, are more conducive to depression and or mental illness? Or does it matter?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, there are people depressed everywhere, but for me, New York City, not being involved in the energy, I would look at it and cry and say, look, those people are holding hands, or look, the kids are all dressed up for Easter. And so you see what you want but can't have. At least I did.
Now, what is your favorite moment of this book writing process? When did you feel the most joy around it?
I think after my 1,000,000th draft, when I knew that, yeah, this is it.
And was that before you submitted it to a publisher, or was that afterward?
I worked with a publisher throughout. So I wrote a couple by myself, and then I worked with the publisher, and he'd be like, no, redo this whole thing. Or I'd look at something and say, no, I hate this, and redo it. And I'm a writer by trade. So for me, it was probably easier than others to write a book.
Did you listen to all of the advice, or did you hang on to something that someone else had a recommendation about?
Well, my mom was kind of embarrassed and didn't want me to put certain things in the book. And I said, but I have to. I can't hide. This is my journey. And if I hide something, then I'm not being true to myself or to anyone else.
Now, is that true across the board? I know that, there are some things that people do have a line about in terms of a memoir. Do you feel that like anything goes, and even if it might hurt somebody?
For me, yes, because I'm trying to help other people, and, hiding things about the way I was raised or something, that played a big part. I was adored by my father, and that played a huge part later on in my life. And, I had to say things about my mom raging, because I started raging, and then luckily I got help and I stopped. But you have to tell the whole journey.
And what does your mom think about the book now? Does she embrace it, or does she pretend it doesn't exist?
She pretends it doesn't exist. She got rid of her copy. She couldn't have it in the house, and she can't talk about it.
But you still have a relationship with her, correct?
We have a great relationship now, yes.
That's fantastic. So your advice to other writers is don't hold back.
I mean, I didn't tell the whole world I had an abortion, and here I am. I had an abortion because that's really what precipitated everything. Yeah, and be true to yourself. If you're telling a story, you got to be true to yourself, and you have to be true for other people.
Also, what is the biggest thing you could tell a writer about producing a book from your experience?
For a memoir, if you don't cry, at least during one part of it, you're not doing it a service. Because people write memoirs for a reason, and if nothing makes them cry, then it's not coming from the heart.
And how about the other piece? How about the nuts and bolts of writing? How do you get something on a page and finish it? What's your advice about that?
That's a hard one. I'm a writer by trade. I was born a writer. Every weekend, Saturday and Sunday, I would spend the whole day just writing, rewriting. I would write chapters and then put them where they belonged, or I'd remember something and then add it. It's a labor of love. You have to really want to do it.
So you said you were born a writer. Was there any influences in your life that led you in that direction? Or did you from your first picture book, you were like, this is it, this is me?
When we had to write stories, I think it was like second grade, I was writing poems. I would, like they would say, write a 1-page paper. I would write 10 pages. It was just, and my daughter now is a writer. So I do believe it's in the genes.
And did you have anyone that, there's a fly on me. Did you have anybody that really influenced your writing that you would consider a mentor?
Well, in my job, I had a lot of mentors in advertising, but my parents were my biggest fans, both of them. They were very proud of me.
Did you write any advertisements that people would know?
Oh, so long ago. Right now, I work for National Debt Relief. So we help people pay off their debt and live a better life. So.
Living a better life is super important. And what else is really super important, that you come here and you've told your story and you're helping others, and it's a wonderful book. So Sharon Greenwald, I'd like to thank you for being with us. And folks, here's the book that you can check out, 69th Street Suicide, a memoir of divorce, depression, and defining my why. And you can probably not necessarily buy it on Amazon, but buy it whenever you can, and wherever fine books are sold. And thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much.
All right. For those that are watching the streaming on Facebook, you probably heard my spiel before. I'm going to cut you off right now, but if you'd like to be involved in our open mic, please use the Zoom link. I will gladly welcome you in. So thanks for coming, and I won't be here for 2 weeks, but I hope that you'll be here in 2 weeks as well.